first item is roll call. Diane?
Mayor Skook,
Present.
Vice Mayor Nye. Here. Councilmember Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Grossman.
Still here.
Councilmember Mallory.
Yep, on time.
Councilmember Rooney.
Here.
We have a quorum still, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, move on to number 3. Discussion of proposed fiscal year 2018-19 budget. For discussion only. That's okay. Please note department director should address major capital projects for their department. A, 5:35 to 6 p.m. General overview. Larry, William, management, management and manager service.
Okay, Mayor and Council, thank you for being here, and this is our annual 2 back-to-back meetings as it relates to getting your input on the budget. And now, having said that, we've been getting your input on the budget dating back all the way to November when we had a retreat. Since that time, we ended up having a road show where we went out to the public after getting your input on what you wanted to see included in this year's budget. We went out to the community, asked for their input, and that was done over 5 or 6 meetings, I believe it was, where we went out to various master plan communities, and we had a meeting here as well to go ahead and secure input from the community. This year, the level of interest, the number of people that went to the meetings went up dramatically. We were looking somewhere between 150, 200 people that we ended up talking to that attended attended one of the many meetings that we had around the community. And then we brought to you some departmental requests and or direction during our second retreat, which was in late January. So with that in mind, a process that has been used especially for the last 2 years as it relates to the community outreach, we proudly bring to you the results of your input, the community's input, and then individual department meetings to go ahead and fashion this report. Now, what I would like to do is have you refer or turn to page 1I. Actually, it's 1.5. There is the letter that I crafted that is in the budget book, and that touches on some of the highlights of this year's budget. Now, for anybody that's not familiar with it, that might be watching, our budget starts, the new year starts July 1 and goes to the end of June of 19. So this is the 18-19 budget that we are considering. And we would be remiss if we didn't go ahead and, as we talk about the new budget year, if we don't mention a couple of things. Number one is it's our 40th anniversary. And that happens with the celebration, and the actual date is August 25th and 26th is the actual date where the town of Prescott Valley was incorporated a mere 40 years ago. A second item that is of particular note, and that is that one individual who has been an elected official and helped guide the development of this community is going to be enjoying the adoption of his last town budget, and that would happen to be Mayor Harvey Skook. And we would be remiss if we did not go ahead and recognize the 24 plus years of Harvey's very steady hand on the tiller. And so, Harvey, I hope you enjoy the process here this evening and tomorrow night and the other steps that we take going forward until it's adopted in June.
I don't know what to say about it. I sat through a few of these over the years. And they're real exciting, you know what I mean?
Well, there's certainly a level of excitement that is really hard to describe in words. So with that in mind, at the bottom of page 1.5 is the beginning of the goals that you have outlined that you want to see us accomplish. And number one is to continue to build reserves, and it goes through 13 items that you have identified in our goal setting and budget processes. And we are doing everything that we can to meet those goals, and you will find the details contained in this outstanding book that Bill and his team have put together. Once again, I do smell award winner again with this book, which will then make that about the 16th or 17th year in a row if he is able to bring home that award. So with that in mind, I would, Bill's going to start getting into the details, but I would like to give you the 30,000-foot view going beyond what you see here in my letter that's included in the budget. And just very simply stated, the 30,000-foot view this year, we have held the line on operational budgets. Okay, why is that? Well, we've ended up losing one very major tax generator in town. In addition to that, the cumulative effect of losing 3 retail outlets in this community has gone ahead and slowed the growth. Now, let me be specific about that. Slowed the growth of sales tax revenue to where if those 3 entities were still here, we would be talking about significantly greater sales tax collection. Okay, but we're missing 3 big boxes. Okay, which does speak to the continued evolution of the retail environment out there, which is in flux as we see more and more online purchases of which we are not getting sales tax collection. So for that particular event to happen, we are hedging our bet, being conservative, and we have not looked to increase operational budgets. In addition to that, the employees are not going to be receiving a cost of living increase this year, okay, because we are assessing the landscape and see how this continues to shake out. The employees will be having the opportunity to increase their compensation based on merit. Okay, which is something that we've done for the last 6 years. But we're holding the line. We're holding the line on expenditures. Now, when you come down from the 30,000-foot level, there is something important to note, and that is moving away from the general fund operations and staffing. We are significantly moving forward on a number of major projects. Number one is Public Works and the street maintenance project. That is a revenue source that you have clearly identified, and you want to see the maintenance of the streets and you want to see streets rebuilt. Norm's going to get into the specifics of that. That continues to be robust and moving forward. Secondly, you identified a need to continue to improve parks. We're going to be opening up a new park in Granville, and that's going to be developer built, but we are adding amenities to that, and that's going to be a beautiful showcase park. In addition to that, there's going to be some major playground improvements, including something that you identified, and I believe it's going to be at George Anderson Park, which is an adaptive, meaning handicap accessible playground unit, which is something that you have long asked for, and it's going to be put in along with a major upgrade of the playground equipment over at Mountain Valley Park. So, but that comes from development impact fees. And so that is something that doesn't impact general fund, which we're being very conservative on. In addition to that, in utilities, you're going to be seeing the 3 major things happen. Number one, at the end of the fiscal year, all of our meters, our water meters, and we're looking at over 20,000. Now think about that number, 20,000. That's hard to believe, but we are going to have all of them be electronically working. so we don't go out and meter read the old-fashioned way. And that process was started a few years ago. We're going to bring that to a conclusion this year. In addition to that, you're going to see 2 major water storage tanks constructed with utility fees collected from the building of every new house, because you have said you want to see new development pay for itself. So you're going to see a 3 million gallon tank over at Glassford Hill and a 2 million gallon tank over in Stone Ridge. And so those are projects that are huge, major, expensive, and going forward. And then there's one other new item, and that is we're making good on our agreement with Yavapai College, and we are reimbursing them for their construction cost of this facility. Although I had a meeting this afternoon with NAU, they are going to be paying us rent on that to help offset the payment that we have to make to Yavapai College. So with that, Bill.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Before I start, I do want to thank a group of individuals that helped throughout this whole budget process. Department heads, their admin assistants. We're very fortunate to have an experienced group to work with. Not everybody gets what they want, but through this process, it's been very smooth. We've had very few issues. So it's been very, very nice to be able to work with a very good group of individuals through the various departments, even Richard. So, that's kind of nice. And Casey, our new director, either Stuart taught her really well or she's a fast learner because she did a great job in preparing the library budget also. So, that's a group from the department side. Now I really have to thank the group that kind of puts this all together, which is my staff. Between Katie, Irina, Lisa, and Latoya. They've done a marvelous job, especially Latoya. Lee retired last year. She had some big shoes to fill. She's just done a remarkable job. She's prepared all the budget covers. Everybody has a different cover. Actually, Vice Mayor and you have 2 covers in yours. Larry liked one, and Leah liked another one, so there's 2 in your sleeve. But everyone has a different cover. So it's, she's gone through that. She's put this book together. She expanded a community profile section. So she's just done a remarkable job. And the other part is GIS. In our capital improvement section, we actually added a map of Prescott Valley, and we're listing where all of the major capital improvements are going to be located within Prescott Valley. So there's a nice little map in there right now, too. So tonight, I'm just going to go over this fairly brief. I'm going to focus more on revenues and just kind of hit the highlights of the expenditures, since most of the department heads are here tonight to talk about basically, their budgets. So I do want to point out this is a draft. Any changes that council proposes over the next 2 nights then will be incorporated into the tentative budget, and then that will become our final budget. So I know Larry, so every year I have to give Larry a special cover. And so now I thought...
It's going down there.
I know, and I thought he was just going to kind of keep it to himself and not become kind of somewhat of a distraction on this, but obviously he didn't. And we actually didn't. We were going to say other things on there, but we decided not to, just to keep it somewhat appropriate. So, again, I'm just going to hit this very briefly. As you can see, the proposed expenditure budget for fiscal year 18-19 is $100,398,559 compared to the last year, which is in bracket $93,965,000 and change. So it's an increase of a little over $6.4 million and almost a little less than 7%. Personnel, 21% of the budget. This year, that's actually a little bit lower than normal, and that's due to the fact that we have almost $32 million in capital that we budgeted for this upcoming fiscal year. Compared to last year, personnel services increased by just a little bit less than $1 million. And I have a separate slide that's going to show and kind of explain where some of those differences occur, even though Larry kind of touched on most of them. Operating expenses increased by 2.9% over last year. Again, most of the department heads are here. They'll be talking about their budget. Oh, I should point out that this graph is in Chapter 4 on page 2 with all of the detail there. Capital, it increased by about $4.3 million over last year. Again, Larry hit a lot of the highlights, the main ones between the tanks, purchasing the building next door to us, and then also the renovation of the roof here. We're going to continue trying to finish that up, and the panels on the side. So that's coming up this year. Now, because when we go out and buy we're going to be buying the building next door, we're going to be issuing debt. It's either going to be private placement or we're going to go out and issue MPC bonds. We're not 100% sure yet. But as a result, we've incorporated an estimated amount of $300,000 for next year for the debt service payment related to that building. We won't know for sure until end of July what the true number is going to be, but we had to budget something, so right now I'm looking at around $300,000. This one just shows the same dollar amounts but broken down by fund. General fund, as you can see in the upper left, is $44,283,000. Basically, it's an increase of almost 12% over last year. The biggest component, it's an increase of $4.6 million. The building next door, we're budgeting at $4.5. So overall, you can see that's where the bulk of the expenditure increase is. But I do have a separate slide that kind of shows that breakdown in a little bit more detail. Special revenue, which is HERF, impact fees, actually that decreased by $1.6 million, almost $1.7 million over last year. And part of that is due to the fact that impact fees, we had a lot more projects budgeted in this current fiscal year than we do next year. And that represents approximately $1 million decrease in capital projects. And then the other thing is, most of you probably weren't aware of it, but we had 3 separate funds set up to account for sales tax collection related to the event center. We call it Entertainment District, Town Entertainment District, Developer, and Event Center. Since the CFD now owns, those funds have gone away. That represented around $650,000 that we budgeted last year. Now, all those sales tax collections that were usually accounted for in those funds, all those sales tax collections now will be moved to the general fund. Enterprise funds increased by $4.5 million. Again, as you'll see the detail, especially when Neil starts talking about the detail, most of that increase really has occurred in capital overall. So here's personnel costs and staffing since 2013. For fiscal year 18-19, as you can see on the green line there, we're looking at 2.2 positions that we're going to add for next fiscal year. Most of them are in the general fund, but there's one other one I think we moved over into utilities, I believe. The detail, though, is on Chapter 4, pages 30 is the general fund, and 36 is HERF, and then 41 is the enterprise if you want to look at the detail related to staffing. But salaries overall, as you can see in the blue graph at the bar there, it really didn't increase much over last year. Basically, we're looking at about $250,000 increase in salaries. Like Larry indicated, we are budgeting a 3% merit increase, no COLA, and we also then are going to be adding 2 positions basically to the budget. Now, part of this offset is due to the fact that we have turnover. Whenever anybody retires, typically we hire them at a little bit lower pay range, which is then incorporated into this budget. So even though the number of positions go up because of the turnovers and that, the overall budget doesn't increase corresponding to the number of people being added. Benefits. Benefits actually increased by 10%. And that's for two reasons. Part of it is health insurance, which Barb Lear will be here tomorrow night to talk about that. But we are seeing an increase in health insurance. The other one is that we are budgeting an additional $400,000 to pay toward the police unfunded pension. This year, current year, we're at $500,000. We're upping that to $900,000. So we're going to apply $900,000 toward the pension, unfunded liability pension next year. So as soon as this budget is approved, actually we'll be making a lump sum payment sometime in July to apply toward that unfunded liability.
And that is something that is one of your priorities that you identified in the retreat. And where's the revenue coming from for that? That's the growth in the half-cent sales tax that you went ahead and approved a couple of years ago. So we're adhering to your direction.
Yeah, the amount originally started at $1 million, a little over $1 million, and then all of a sudden we had this large retailer close that kind of put a little bit of a kibosh to that number a little bit. So we did lower it just a tad. Capital outlay, pardon me?
It's still substantial.
It's substantial, right. Next, actually, just as a related note, we'll be coming before you, I think, next month with a pension policy to discuss how to address the paying down that unfunded liability. So capital outlay. Capital outlay details located in Chapter 9. This year, we added another section called technology as a result of our council retreat. So that starts on page 7 of Chapter 9. So when you start looking at the 5-year detail, you're gonna see basically a section for technology. You'll see a section for machinery and equipment, and then capital projects. So we're summarizing and we're separating it a little bit. Hopefully that will help a little bit. Again, the two major increases occurred in the general fund, which is pretty substantial. Again, the detail of all the items that are going to be purchased is in Chapter 4, page 32. There's a complete list of every item capital item that we're purchasing within the general fund. And then enterprise fund. We've already told you some of the main ones, but there is a long list of other capital items within the enterprise fund that we will be budgeting for and probably purchasing next fiscal year. Let's spend a little bit of time now on revenues. How are we going to pay for a lot of these items? Total revenue, this graph is on page 1 of Chapter 4. So total estimated revenues and other sources for next fiscal year is $84,948,294. That's an increase of 5.5% over last year, or $4.4 million. Now I do got to point out that up in the upper left, you can see cash reserves, $15,450,000. Basically, that's the amount of money that we're going to need to balance our budget. Between proposed expenditures and proposed revenues, we're $15 million short. So that's going to come from existing proceeds or existing fund balances or cash reserves. Now, I do have a slide kind of shows a breakdown of where all that money, what department, what funds those are coming from. So I'll touch that here in a second. Sales tax. There's $22,923,000 that we're budgeting next year. This current fiscal year, we actually projected $23,365,000. So we're actually about 2% less than what we actually had proposed and what we think we're going to collect this year. And that, again, is primarily due to the retail business that closed. Now, we are still seeing increases in a lot of the other areas, but this was a large retailer, and it took we took a substantial hit as a result of them closing. Intergovernmental revenues, you can see we're at about almost $20 million. Last year we were about 18.1. The big increases there. Part of it's state share revenues. We've seen an increase in our state sales, income tax, sales tax, and auto lieu. HERF, which is also rolled into the number, actually saw a decrease this year. So right now they proposed, the state actually took 1% of that distribution from last year, or cut the distribution by 1%. So actually HERF saw a slight decrease this year. But overall, still state share revenues went up approximately $490,000. And a lot of that's due to our population increasing over the previous year. The other big part is that we have a joint project with Yavapai County that I'm sure Norm will be getting into, Sunset Lane. So we got a donation of $1.5 million. Well, I wouldn't call it a donation, but basically it's a joint project that, I think we're going to account for the expenses on it. So we're showing the revenues coming in also. So that's really what accounts for that huge increase in our intergovernmental revenues. And then utilities, like Larry said, we're going to be using a lot of those connection charges that we're going to be collecting for the various tanks and various other projects. We are looking at almost $1 million increase in capacity collections, connection charges collections next year. And part of it is the apartment building that's going over there across from the event center. We'll be getting that collection of those connection charges sometime beginning next fiscal year sometime. And the other part is, this one is always a scary part, but we're looking at increasing our revenues for our user fees for our water and wastewater have gone up substantially this year. A lot of that was due to the weather. We can't always assume that we're going to have dry weather every single year. So the water water collections, it varies from year to year. But we are looking at increasing our user collections by $600,000 this year over last year. Revenues by fund, general fund. Again, I have a slide that'll just kind of touch here briefly. Pretty quick. I think it's the next slide or two. General fund increased by $4.2 million over last year. HERF is the one I just talked about. We're actually seeing a slight decrease of around only $40,000 over last year. So that 1% hit really didn't affect us that much. And then capital improvements, again, third of a cent goes into this fund for a lot of the street projects. That took a little bit of hit this year due to, again, talking about the retailer closing. But what we did this year for the first time, I think in, 6 years, we've actually transferred $250,000 from the general fund to that capital growth fund. So we are starting to build that fund up again. We haven't used that fund in years and years and years. So we are starting. We put $250,000 as a start anyway. So, and it can only be used for one-time capital-related projects. So here's this one, the change in fund balance. So this is in Chapter 4, pages 3 and 4. So this graph right here summarizes what's on page 3 in Chapter 4. So I'll start with general fund. Now you can see the estimated beginning fund balance, $19,975,000. I do have to tell you that I met with my staff. We all came up with projections, and I actually projected more than this number. And they all talked me down. So that just proves that they're actually more conservative than I am.
Not possible.
And I don't know where I see now. The police chief isn't here, but they're the ones that said that I'm most conservative. My staff, let me tell you, they talked me down. So we got a little wager going to see who's the closest. If I win, I'll let you know for sure. If I don't win, I'm not going to let you know. Okay. So if you never hear anything, then you'll know that they probably were closer. But I'll never admit that. But anyway, so we have about $20 million beginning fund balance. You can see the revenues and then the expenditures. So in the general fund, we're basically a balanced budget. We're adding only $26,000 basically to fund balance. So overall, we hope that, at least we're balanced for the most part. We're not draining any money from the general fund. Now, HERF on the other side, we got $414,000. Part of that is going to go to operational expense. Part of that is going to go for capital. But we are going to be using $414,000 of the beginning fund balance to basically balance the budget. The other big one is impact fees. That one is primarily in the Parks and Rec. Like Larry had indicated, we're going to be making some major improvements to the 3 parks. That's a little less than $1 million. So that's where we're going to be using the money that we've accumulated over the years and using that money to make those improvements. The other one is capital improvements. That's really the third of a cent. Norm has a big project that we're going to be doing on Viewpoint Drive. The other part is paying for the annual debt service on the street impact, the bonds that we issued for doing all the street improvements on Navajo and Lakeshore Drive and all those. So that's where the money is coming from. So those are all accumulated fund balances. We have plenty of reserves. Yes, we're going to be hitting it by about $15 million, but those are monies that we've accumulated for specific purposes that we're going to be using this upcoming fiscal year. Enterprise fund is the one that's a little bit unique because it is an enterprise fund. Part of that money, around $6 million, is really depreciation, which is a non-cash transaction. The balance, about $4 million, that is going to be cash reserves that we'll be using basically for all of those projects that Neil, the tanks and things like that. So we'll be using our cash reserves for those. So even though the $15 million may look a little bad, when you break it down by fund, I don't think it's really as bad as it appears, at least from my perspective. Revenues, and this is just the general fund. You can see at the bottom, $44,309,000 is what we're proposing for the general fund. Last year, it's $40,134,000. So again, it is increasing, but there's a couple of things. Other financing sources, you can see $4.5 million. That's where we're going to go out and issue bonds to pay for the building next door. So that's a substantial increase in our total budget. The other one is miscellaneous. I got $2.1 million budgeted for litigation proceeds. Hopefully we're going to collect more. Larry assures me, and if Ivan was here, he would tell me that we're going to collect a lot more than that. But who knows? So we'll see. We are seeing in this slide, we are showing that a modest, slight increase in our TPT. That's a little bit misleading because there's the money that we used to collect from the entertainment districts now should be really reflected here. So if I would roll that $600,000 into this, you would actually see a 2% overall decrease in our TPTs from one year to the next. So and then obviously intergovernmental, that's where a lot of our state share revenues are. So that's why that's up by about 3%, a little over 3%. And then, this is a breakdown, which is what most of you are here tonight for, is all the various department heads, and Larry will be talking about the different changes in their budget. The ones that I think that have increased the most over the previous year, town clerk. Obviously, Diane will have some very good reasons for her budget increasing over the previous year. Human Resources, Parks and Rec, Magistrate Court, and then non-departmental. Those are the ones that actually have seen a little bit of increase, slightly more than what Larry had the directive that Larry had given. With that, there's going to be two future tentative dates. We'll be adopting a tentative budget on May 24th. And then public hearing and adoption of final budget on June 28th. So before I turn it over to Larry, I can answer any questions, but I would like to, show you that all of this information, actually a lot more information, we actually have uploaded on our town website also. So I can either answer any questions while it loads. It might take a minute or two here to load.
Bill,
Yes.
I just want to make sure I understood. You said on the debt service, was it 300,000 estimated for the building right here for
That
this
is
next
correct.
year? Okay, thank you.
Laura, two.
I have a question about our improvement on the parks. Is any of the parks going to have at least one wheelchair swing? Because I know they're exorbitant.
Apparently the approach that the parks professionals are using is to have one significant playground unit that is completely handicapped accessible. Is there a move over the long term to have like one swing or something like that in each park? That's not a near-term goal because all of the money's going for a very large and appropriately equipped playground unit.
Well, the one that we're dealing with now, will it have a wheelchair swing?
Yes.
Wonderful. Because people will find that out, they'll know where it is, and they'll go to it. That's perfect.
Good. Any other questions? Mike?
Yeah, I just had a question about cash reserves, and I know we just went through that breakdown in terms of where that 15 million, 456, whatever it is. Now, we've talked about reserves in the past, and is this our reserve account? All right.
Yeah, this is, I mean, each account, each fund, you look at it, basically that's the rainy day fund for the most part. So general fund, you know, it's anywhere, we'll know when we won't know our official number until we do our audit, which will be August, September, we'll know our official number. But we're hoping it's going to be around $20 million.
Okay.
So that's $20 million. Some of that is dedicated for other purposes, but most of that basically is available for whatever needs we need.
All right. Well, you answered my question because I thought we were talking about previously in a range of 17 million something.
Right, and that would be it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions?
So this information is actually on our town website. So we've loaded basically our entire budget down to, boy, it goes down to a very detailed level that anyone can access in our budget or on our system. Right now, basically, and we, over here on the left side, we created what we call views. Irina, a staff member of mine, she did an amazing job creating all these views for people that they can just click and look at different information. If you know anything about filtering, there's actually other ways you can filter information if you want. But here's basically revenues and expenditures, basically the amounts that we just kind of discussed. Now, if you want, you can just go ahead, if I can get this button to work. So what you can do is you can just click on revenues, and then all of a sudden it'll show you all the different revenues that you have available. And then if you want to even go into further, you can say, okay, here's intergovernmental. You can click on intergovernmental, and then it starts telling you even in more detail. So again, it's just a lot of very useful information. All of a sudden, you can back out, or you can just click on the view again. Now, one of the nice things too is this just gives you the current year. If you want to see a comparison of how you did the previous years, you just click, and then it shows you all of the previous years. So the two over here, right here, are the current years. The little slash in it basically is budget information, and then if you see the solid, basically that's actuals. What's kind of nice is if you just want to see expenditures, you just click on expenditures, and then it'll repopulate, and it'll just show you all expenditures only by the different categories that are over here. And right now you can see there's 29 more that are basically hidden at this point. So you can go down this very elaborate, detailed level of, you know, anybody who wants to look at, you know, where professional services are, you can see that information. One other thing you can do is if you want to just click on salaries, You can see regular and full-time. If you want to go, just say regular, then basically that's it right there. But one of the nice things I think is nice is under filters. If I want to go ahead and just say, well, I want to look at it by departments, you click on departments, and then it shows up by all the different departments what the regular salaries for all those different departments are. So, I mean, I think it's a very useful tool for people to become more informed of budgets, how we've done current year, how we've done in previous years. You can see we go back to 11 and 12 information. Some of the other filters that we have built in here, we also have, capital by fund. So we can show you that information. We can show you revenues. So all this information, again, like I said, is available for the public to view. If you want to just look at general fund only, you just click on general fund. And then you can actually go ahead and break it down by the various categories within the general fund if you want. We just think it's very helpful for, again, to try to make sure that we're providing this information that people, they don't have to come to the office and ask for it. They don't have to go to the library and ask for a book, or Larry's office. All the information, now the detail, obviously the text is not in here. The narrative as to the reason why the increases occurred is not in here, but at least the numbers are.
That, sir, is uptown.
Yeah, and I think here's one of the nicest ones. This is what we just added also. Hopefully if I can get it to work correctly. So this is the one that while it loads, it actually shows all the various improvements, major capital improvements that we've made, that we're going to be making for the upcoming fiscal year. So you can just kind of click on it. You can actually increase it. You can zoom in a little bit more. So if you're not quite sure what it is, you just click on it. And then they'll give you a little bit of a narrative as to what it is, hopefully.
Another award.
It'll work. It usually worked in my office. It's being difficult. Oh, it's loading. But anyway, so it actually will talk about what that project is, where the money comes from, things like that. So we think it's kind of nice. I mean, it's something, again, that everyone is able to go out and visualize. We have it broken down from $200,000 on up, are what the projects are that are listed on here. We're only focusing on capital projects, not any major equipment or anything like that. So I was hoping I'd get one to come up. There must be something has got a little glitch here. So I just want to show you that, just to let you know that that information is all available. So with that, I'll answer any other questions council might have.
Any comments? Anyone? Questions? Mary?
No, sir.
None? Larry?
Nope.
Well done, Bill.
Bill, keep it up.
Thank you.
And then buy us dinner if you win a bet.
Sorry, Louise.
Okay, we move on to the next one. Council, page 6, chapter 6, page 3. Larry, you are...
Okay, the mayor, I take a look at the time, and we're about 25 minutes behind schedule already, but we're going to fix that up. Okay, if you'll take a look at the council budget, pages 6.4 and 6.5, and goes over to 6.6. Probably the most important thing is to turn to page 6.6, and keeping in line and setting a great example has been the council budget. The direction was everybody have a flat budget going into the new year. You actually saved about $6,000 from the budget you've got now. So that's setting a great example for the rest of the organization, which is minding our P's and Q's and being conservative with our expenditures. Part of the reason for for this is you had some money this year, the year that we're in now, that was set aside for the 40th anniversary, which all of that has been put in under special events under Parks and Rec, which is where it appropriately belongs. But other than that, do you have any questions on the council budget?
Questions, anyone?
Okay, moving on to the executive management budget, page 6-7. As you will note, that includes the deputy town manager, Ryan, water resources, John, economic development, Ben, and it has Heidi as communications, and capital projects is Bill. Those are the individuals. You know them all. These divisions within executive management are one-person shows. You will take note, if you choose, that you'll see that executive management is down nearly 1% from the previous year. Once again, setting a good example. You'll see that on page 610 that we have been busy. You'll see the breakdown on a number of those activities, as well as on page 611. And we intend to expand on those things. John has some significant projects going forward on the water resources side, making good with recharge obligations. One thing that we haven't dialed into the budget, and we've been very reluctant to, is that we anticipate this year getting some of the first proceeds of our water auction. Well, it's not the first. Actually, it's the second threshold, and perhaps even the third threshold where payments are due to the town. We didn't build those into the budget, but with Jasper moving forward, there's a possibility, and also with the development that is north of here, adjacent to Agua Park, there may actually be some water that was auctioned that will be put back into play, and we look forward to collecting some of those dollars. Do you have any questions for John as it relates to water resources?
Questions, anyone?
No.
John?
I just want to make a
Mike, you have
brief comment. It's really not about the budget, but I did see the letter you sent off to our neighbors, I guess, to the north regarding the, trying to think, the pump station there. I guess there's a more formal word for that. And, you know, I think I had addressed that at the mayor's meeting a couple of weeks ago in terms of what the issues are and what we can expect. And the thing I learned from reading that material was that they have not made any attempt to outline what the impact would be, just what they plan to do and where things are going to be situated in terms of the hydroelectric facility. So I appreciate the fact that you're offering your information material, scientific evidence relative to what we know today that might help them in their assessment. But I know that's far away, but I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Whiting, and I will come back in a little bit and talk about our capital plans.
It's going to be very quick.
Any other questions?
If you would turn to page 625, let's get right to the bottom line, and you will see that executive management on their operations have gone from 978,000 down to 969,000. Once again, setting an example for the rest of the organization. So, do you have any questions on executive management?
Questions, anyone? No. I don't think so, Larry.
Okay, well then, if I could ask you please to turn to page 6213. Okay, that's non-departmental.
6213, you said?
6-213.
Got it.
What you will see on the previous page, on 212, is major services and purchases, non-capital. You're going to see this is where Bill ends up parking the development agreements that we have, where we have the revenue. He's projecting just about $2 million in reimbursements, but you'll notice further that we are expecting contributions of a greater amount. So in other words, it's working. We are bringing in more money than not. And so that is certainly a good thing. You'll notice the next item, outside agency funding. That was a number that had been growing, and back in 2004, we were directed to whittle that down, which we had. The reason that you'll see that number where it is you're looking at Prescott Valley Economic Development Foundation. We, with their last contract, if you'll recall, we put in incentives, and that they were up at a number of $200,000 a year, but during the recession that number was taken down to $150,000 a year. And when there was a request to restore that, we said no, not until you meet certain milestones. And we set up those milestones, and they were number of members and and the amount of revenue that is brought in from the private sector that matches our money. And so last year they received a $25,000 bump because they'd met those thresholds. And PVEDF is doing an outstanding job of continuing to grow not only membership but revenue coming in. And so they're hitting that trigger that takes them back to what was being contributed to them in 2007. So it's been a while, but certainly that's a function of the recession. And so with that in mind, you can see the breakdown on page 213 at the very top. You're looking at the breakdown essentially for what is labeled non-departmental. If you turn the page to 214, you will end up seeing that we have in this non-departmental budget the building purchase, meaning next door, which is the reimbursement to Yavapai College when they exercise that clause in their development. And once again, met with NAU today, and we're working on the lease agreement with them, and we'll be recovering some of that some of those dollars, and that'll end up going towards the debt service on the bonds. You'll also see the fairly large number, which is this building, and we are looking at going into mediation with the architectural firm and the construction firm. I believe it's the second week of June to go ahead and begin the process of setting the stage to recover the dollars that we have already spent on this building and dollars that continue to need to be spent on this building, and that process will start. If mediation does not get us where we need to be, then the lawsuit will continue to recover the money on this building. So with that in mind, do you have any questions on non-departmental?
Questions, anyone?
What are we asking for them in mediation, or have you set that figure yet?
Yes, we do, and I'm not going to speak about that publicly.
Okay.
It's all part of the lawsuit that could continue to go forward. Okay, with that in mind, I'll bet you Richard wants to talk.
Yeah, we're going to community development next. Chapter 6, page 57.
I want to take a moment to acknowledge that that Kool-Aid that I've been feeding Bill Copey for the last couple of years seems to be taking effect. I think that that's a direct contributor to his optimism. I really like to see that. It's a far cry from the doldrums when we were in the Great Recession. I think that those days are behind us, at least for a while. Give you a general overview. Obviously, our permit activity is up. We believe that that will continue over the course of the next budget year. We've got a number of new projects that you'll be seeing this year, both residential, apartment, as well as commercial development. That's stemming from an increase of about 50% of initial project review applications. Those are those applications that come in where people are proposing to do something, invest their capital here in Prescott Valley. And we are doing 2 or 3 of them now every week, which is a far cry from what we were doing before, when weeks would go by when nobody would be knocking on our door. Now we have a full plate every week. We are expecting that the new developments that are under construction now will be producing lots, and those lots will be consumed by people who want to live here in Prescott Valley. There continues to be a problem in providing labor for those constructions, and that has really muted the ability for some of the developers to come forward and meet the market. Joe Contadino tells me he closes his sales office 3 days a week because he can't keep up with the demand. He starts 5 residential starts weekly without fail, and he anticipates he'll continue to do that. Likewise, we've met with the developer or home builder in Jasper. They look to create the same kind of volume. There's not a need for competition as it relates to products. They've all niched quite well. They're doing well. Rather, their competition is to get labor and have that labor bring to market more quickly because of a competitive advantage, bring that more quickly to the market so that it can be sold. That's where they're competing presently. As a result of that, our calls for service have increased. As I mentioned before, unlike the police department, we don't have to rush out there, but we have an obligation for the time of service, and we provide that service within the day that people call for inspections. So because of that, we're adding a half-time position. We have a half-time position building inspector right now. That's proposed to go to a full-time building inspector to keep up with the calls for service. Likewise, we have 1 full-time plans examiner. It's proposed that we add an additional plans examiner so we have some redundancy. The current plans examiner is a registered architect. He's a licensed registered architect and does quite a job. But if something were to happen in his life, we would be hanging out, and we need to provide or have some redundancy. We also are looking at and have proposed creating 2 mid-level positions which would deal with field operations. We would plan to hire those within. Likewise, have the current incumbent in the plans examination field be a supervisor to supervise plans examination. The adoption of the 2018 International Building Code will be something that we'll be undertaking this year. We try to do it simultaneously with our other partners, those being Yavapai County and our sister city to the west. We find that they are oftentimes several months behind us, but we intend to, again, engage them so that we implement, at least we're going to be implementing July 1st of 2019, the 2018 building codes. As part of submittal of all of the new projects, they will be submitting master development plans that will go through our shop. We've encouraged that they align those with the 2018 edition because it's actually clearer and less cumbersome than the current 2012 edition that we administer. Let's see. We're going to gauge where we are with the increases that you approved, 7% across the board for administrative services. Those dollars are intended to go towards technologies. Larry won't let me raid the utility funds or any other funds at this point. I thought it was a great idea. I'm continuing to feed him the Kool-Aid as well, and maybe it'll take place. But we're going to monitor where those increases could be placed and how much those will generate over the course of a fiscal year or a portion of fiscal year. And if they are sufficient, we're going to be back to you proposing the implementation of new software over the course of the latter part of this fiscal year and certainly into the next fiscal year. It's good to be busy. The day flies by. I hope that this continues for some time into the future. It's certainly a whole lot better than what we were dealing with. With that, I'd respond to questions.
Questions, anyone? Mike?
Yeah, I was just curious because I always get this question. Do you have a standard in terms of demographics for those people who come in and are looking to purchase single-family residences? Are they primarily retired or a mixture, or do you have a
I get
idea?
a publication from Joe Contadino about every 6 months. He tells me where they come from, generally their age, if he samples them. We get a lot of pre-retirees moving here, that this is their last place that they want to build a house. Part of the problem is they come here from wherever they reside, and there's no place for them to live because everybody wants to be here. So you're going to see a number of new garden apartment, single-family houses that'll be put in the market and held for rentals because they satisfy a need where somebody can come in and sign a year-long lease while they're waiting in a waiting list for them to build their house wherever they're going to reside in Shangri-La, Prescott Valley. And that continues. We see now that people come here from other communities. They get on a waiting list, and then they pester us about when can they move into their house. Developers and builders are building them as fast as they can to keep up the quality, but it's really hard. To the extent, Michael, that we're looking at entering into agreements with some of the builder communities to have a combination of inspections that we do later in the process, and they actually bring in special inspectors, engineers, and they certify certain things, and they're going to have to populate our records to show that certain things took place, underground plumbing as an example, so that they get it right before the plumber leaves, because if they don't get it right and the plumber didn't do it right, we go out the next day, we red tag it, or we do a correction notice. They don't come back for 3 days to be able to correct it. So that slows down their production building, whereas if they have somebody on site that says this isn't right, you have to do it this way, the guy doesn't leave until he gets it right. So the next day when we inspect it, it's approved, and then they can carry on with the rest of their trades. Mm-hmm. They're looking at investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to bring their product to market more quickly.
And we're still looking at, I guess, an average, because I remember Ryan used to publish a brief from your data every month, and it was around 30 homes a month at about a value of about $25 million.
You know, we're doing 55 and above a month now. I think this next fiscal year we'll hit 70 a month. All right. The wheels will start coming off at about 100.
All right.
Any other question, Laura?
You've been there before.
Well, and one thing that I do appreciate, and I would conclude to offer my time to the judge, because I know he's getting antsy because Bill went on too long. The manager and you folks have been very kind in meeting our needs when we ask for staff in the middle of the year, because the wheels are coming off. Produce a budget. This is what's coming in. This is what we're experiencing. I've been very cautious about adding staff, but they go all day long. They go out early, and they come back late. So we're starting to run into instances where either we're going to have to start doing them on Saturday, or we're going to have to be looking at overtime hours in order to keep up.
Good. Other questions? Mary?
I just want to say, in regards to your comment about us as we work with you and the needing staff and everything, the people that work for this town, you can't help but want to do the best you can with all of you, because you are so committed into the best for this community. You know, you have been here a long time. We're talking years and years, people that work for this town. they've given their heart and their soul. Their kids have lived here. They've raised them. You know, you really have a part of this town in your heart. And so it's very easy. I'm speaking for me, but I'm sure it's for everybody. It's very easy for us to go forward and do what we need to do with all of you because of your constant concern and the heart service you have.
Well, I really enjoy it. I attended an initial project review today. I don't do that very often because I do other things, and I've got really capable people that take care of that. And through attending that, these people came away and they're amazed at how welcoming we were to try to facilitate what they were trying to do. And my comment to them in passing was, well, you have the opportunity to invest wherever you want to invest your money. We want you to invest your money here in Prescott Valley. And that's why we are so welcoming and accommodating, because it's a competitive advantage that we have to other communities in the area. We are very user-friendly.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Richard, thank you. Okay, we move on then to Magistrate Court, page 6-139. Judge, you are up.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Good to see you. I want to give you a little different perspective on how to view the court. The court is much like a roller coaster. You look at the budget and say, really? How do you get that? Years ago, we had like 3,000 filings. Right before photo enforcement, it was around 5,000 filings. Then it went up to like 30,000 filings. When photo enforcement ended, it went down to about 6,000 filings. Now it's up to about 9,000 filings. I suggest that this roller coaster is quite exciting. My favorite ride at a fair is a roller coaster. Now, some clerks have fallen off. Others have taken their place and got back in. Some ride the roller coaster, wow, this is fun, and throw their arms up. Others grab on like white knuckles and hang on. And it really is kind of exciting in that regard, though we plug along and do pretty much the same thing every year. The real difference this year is the Supreme Court of Arizona has mandated that every court in the state get on a 3-year plan to get court security. So you can have pros and cons with it, but it is the mandate. So that is something that's changing the landscape for the court, because I'm directed that it has to be done. I sat down with Larry and we talked about that as well, and we put things in the budget in regard to that, pursuant again to the Supreme Court mandate. We had the court administrator from Prescott, who has the authority to come in and do a report. He walked around with my court supervisor and authored a detailed report suggesting some of the first things that perhaps should be done and need to be done in regard to this 3-year plan to get security. So most of the difference in the budget has to do with that. They talked in terms, the report talks in terms of more duress alarms. Right now there is a button on the court bench, and we actually tested it recently. What?
And it works.
And it works. Somebody responded and called and told me it worked. All right. And the report indicates they want one at each of the court windows and one in the court supervisor's office and things like that. And cameras, I suppose cameras are good because after the fact, everything's over. You can look at the film and do what you do with the videos on that. They want ballistic material on the bench and for the clerk, my clerk that's in the courtroom. And So along with, they recommended some convex or concave mirrors and coverings on windows so that people can't just look into different areas of the court. And so it's all, I'll say, very exciting as to what's going to happen and where we're going to finally end up. There is, they expect we'll have people standing outside, wanting people, WAND, checking for what they're bringing into the courtroom. So it's really going to change the landscape again. Depending on your aspect, pro or con, but I look at it, it is mandated, so we're heading down that path by Supreme Court direction. So we don't have to have people there on non-court days. So my main court days still are generally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it appears from the way it's presented now to me that I would only need the security then on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So it's something that is here, and the court has to do it. In talking with Larry, apparently there's some things going on of doing cameras for other reasons other than the court, and it looks like maybe they'll kind of somewhat be able to be combined and try to the proverbial kill two birds with one stone. So that's kind of where the court situation is going. Any questions I can answer on that in particular?
Questions, anyone? Marty?
Well, I'm just curious about this court security and the officers you're going to have there. Are they going to be part of our police department, or are they going to be separately and trained separately?
They'll be separate and trained separate. My understanding is, the way it's been presented to me, it would not be the best use for police officers, so I accept that. The library actually pays security over there. I've been in touch with them. They hire security guards at something like $17 an hour, and that would work just fine for the court. And the Supreme Court also has talked about there will be specific training that can be given to whoever the security would be if they haven't received the training that's acceptable to the Supreme Court. So that's the direction I'm expecting to go at this point in time.
So are they going to be trained to the level of a bailiff in other courtrooms, or?
And I would anticipate to the level of bailiff and maybe even beyond that. They would be the first ones outside the door doing the things they would do there.
Thank you.
Other questions, anyone? Mike?
Yeah, I was just curious. We're not trying to accomplish all this in this budget year. This will be phased in over 3 years.
That is correct.
So we're looking at personnel as well as equipment. So what's in store for this budget year?
Well, this budget year, I'm really looking at trying to do some on the cameras that they're talking about, the duress alarms, to make some progress in that regard. Right. Who knows, maybe even the ballistic, to be able to at least show the Supreme Court I'm moving ahead, and It's still not just being talked about. It's something where just as we can go and phase it in. One of the things that needs to get done, there needs to be a security committee. And again, that may be something I can try to use some people or combine it with another committee that the town has. Right. I know that Casey's on, Casey Danner in IT, so we're going to see, because I need to get that committee established because that's part of the requirements as well.
Right. Well, I did want to mention when I worked at the VA, they did have those panic buttons as well that seemed to work very well. And I guess the only issue is the response time in terms of getting somebody there to handle the situation.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Other questions? Judge, anything else?
No, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Judge. Good job.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
we move on then to Public Works and HERF. Norm Davis, you are up. And that's on page 6-40, 145 and 7-5.
Yeah, correct, Mayor. That's where we're going to start with Public Works. Did want to start, I heard Bill commend his staff. I do want to state I've never done a budget without Deanna Sereno since I've been here. She takes care of all the detail, keeps us on our timelines, and does a great job. That's why it's an easy process for us in order to put together a budget. And likewise, the division directors, Councilwoman Mallory talked about the longevity here, support staff being all the division directors, Alistair Merrow in Streets, Ron Pine, Engineering Division Director, Larry Prentice, the GIS Manager, Boyd Robertson, all 10-plus year people, so they give good input and know their budgets very well, and they know how to, adequately, obviously we're the largest department with expenditures and capital and just sheer operational expenditures for keeping the streets and facilities and all the other various departments going. They do a great job and help us execute it. So we're always about not only budgeting it, but actually delivering the budget. So we do well every year with that staff in place. Mayor, to get started, what we do want to talk about was the general fund. And I did focus on some of the highlights on some of the capital projects as we talked about on the agenda tonight. So probably the first and foremost is the Spouse Viewpoint intersection construction project. That project's been basically delayed about a year. We've had some challenges with getting the right-of-way and design in the best state we can. So we continue to work on right-of-way with the residents and really work at their benefit to see what we can work out with some of the right-of-way that's required rather than building expensive retaining walls. We're looking at filling lots, and that takes quite a bit of dialogue with some of the adjacent residents out there. But that is a $3.9 million project, and that's the 1/3 cent sales tax, and we look forward to moving that particular project this current budget year. And also important to note, too, that the Utilities Department, with a lot of these capital projects, we cooperate with them. So some of the expenditures in Neil's water budget for some of the water enhancements that's going to be part of that Viewpoint Spouse intersection. Likewise, the Sunset Lane partnership with Yavapai County. That's probably one of the more confusing, unless you've worked on the front line like I have. Many different funding sources for the Sunset Lane project. Basically, on the top, it's basically a 50-50 split with Yavapai County with some of their revenues, but we're actually going to split that over 2 budget years. So in aggregate, it's around a $7.2 million construction project, and we've got half the money in this 18-19 budget and the rest in 19-20 budget. So we do have right-of-way negotiations to get started. Plans are 100% complete, but the utility departments, other utility companies will be very substantial in there, so they're working on their plans. We hope to move forward with the right-of-way and some of the temporary construction easements starting July 1st, and we look forward to, this time next year, send that project out for bid in cooperation with Yavapai County. What's important to note is some of the different funding sources. Keep in mind that the county is actually front-loading some of the money this year, and our development impact fees from our town budget won't be until FY 19-20, but money's in our budget because we are the pass-through. Since we will take over the right-of-way, we put money in, but actually the county pays their their proportionate share up front. It's important to know that in addition to all the roadway dollars, also flood control dollars for the storm drain, and that's in the appropriate flood control section. In addition, that Neil's utility department, they've got water and sewer improvements, so there's some funding there too. So there's many different pockets where all that $7.2 million comes over the 2 fiscal years. But very unique project in partnership with Yavapai County, but we look forward to delivering that project starting this time next year to hopefully start the bidding process if right-of-way and temporary construction needs to do well. Smaller one is a long look sidewalk improvement. We're going to bring that to council here in the next month, but part of that project of that sidewalk community development block grant that Ryan leads will be put into place. So that's one of the larger capital projects we have in the general fund. Did want to point out the FEMA remapping project. We did have some funding in this year's budget. We're actually moving forward with some of the particular remedies we have for the new mapping put into place. So we're starting design. We're going to take that to council actually this May 10th for some of the design projects that we can hopefully implement some of the improvements we can to continue to take existing properties that may be in the floodplain, do some channelization projects. So we look forward to that. Not particularly budget this year, but we've got some design projects. We might be able to move forward with some in-house particular excavation there. We're still looking into that, so wanted to note that. Likewise, we finished the 89A transportation study, although not particularly budgeted any particular line item amount. We'll continue with all this growth we're seeing in the particular area with the subdivisions. We're working with ADOT over this next year to look at some of those big projects, maybe a lane widening on 89A to accommodate some Glassford Hill. You know, there's still things in play with the development community on their obligations for capacity improvements, so we'll continue to work on those. Probably no hard dollar spend, but lots of work by staff in order to see those particular partnerships go and scope those projects maybe for next year if we continue on this growth pattern. So lots of opportunity there. And then another smaller project we're doing is the Florentine Stormwater Culvert Enhancements over on Florentine Drive. There, we're going to pay for that out of HERF. We've got big ditch we'd like to fill in there and put a drainage pipe in. So that's a little capital project we're going to do there at $200,000. Richard Parker, touched upon a lot of the new subdivision development. Boyd Robertson, of course, leads that particular effort for make sure our interest in the public infrastructure is built. So we expect a very busy year there also. And we do have some money in the budget if we need to hire some temporary outsourced engineering help or inspection help to deal with this current bubble and see what the bubble is going to do. If it continues, we can make some decisions. But we anticipate staying up and lots of demand on staff to make sure all that subdivision infrastructure is designed accurately and also built adequately. With that, this year we do have quite a few facilities that's part of the general fund that I do want to point out, and some of the highlights. I think Council's aware we're going to open the bids for the Civic Center roof this Monday, and part of that is funded this budget year, but we've got the lion's share, about $220,000 next budget year to replace the Civic Center roof. So we look forward to getting that project bid in on Monday and having council award that, and we can get that roof replaced basically in the month of June and get all that done. So aggregately about a $300,000 roof replacement project, and quite substantial. Other thing that we're doing, I talked to you about the event center parking lots, but this is the year of the parking lot too for all of our three buildings here, the Civic Center and the library and also the police department buildings. So each of one of those parking lots is in the general fund, and aggregately we're going to spend about $150,000 with some enhancements. Each particular parking lot, as we talked about, little different age. The police department parking lot's the oldest. We actually have to do some small area remove and replace, a little more substantial treatment to that. Civic Center has even less, not quite as much as PD, and then we can actually just do basically a tar treatment and restriping of the library, since that's a newer parking lot. But with the library being about 8 years old now, it's the cycle time to get that surface retreated. So quite substantial. We will look forward to moving those forward, but get each one of these parking lots tuned up and crack sealed and resealed to protect that investment, all three parking lots, and that's a pretty large job there. Other thing I want to point out that we've been on a program here with CASA and also the police department to replace the HVAC units. When those buildings were built new, basically the service life of 20 to 25 years, we're hitting that cycle that they're very old, and we've had some failures in those. And actually every year we've been replacing the HVAC unit. We're about 75% done with redoing each, not only the police department, but CASA Senior Center has 5 AC units. We've replaced 3. We're going to replace another one this current year. So we're continually reinvesting in that capital over a time period that each one of those units will be new, but not do it all at one time. So it's a graduated type maintenance course that we're doing there. So each one of those will be done. And likewise, the other unforeseen, we had the Parks and Rec shop heater went out on their facility building. So it was late enough in this year that they don't have heat right now, but they survived with the late spring we're having. But that's another $4,800 expenditure to replace the heater there. So our buildings are getting old, and we are continually moving forward to continue to enhance them. When they get to be about 20 years old, you'd start to need to do some upgrades. So we did here today, this past budget year, it's the elevators in the Civic Center has been a little challenging for us, but we got word today they're actually going to be here Tuesday and Wednesday. So long lead times, it's a unique work. Kind of surprised us. We don't ever give up, but they will be here Tuesday. So we've talked about some of the enhancements there. So part of always reinvesting in our infrastructure here. So facilities does have quite a few capital projects this current budget year coming up to continue to reinvest in our facilities over time. Any questions I can answer about
Questions, anyone?
general fund? I do have two more funding here too, Mayor. Just wanted to touch upon some of the bigger capital. If we can move on, Bill wanted me to do HERF next. I think the biggest highlight here, we're in year 3 of our 5-year enhancement program of streets. I think council's aware in January of 16, we implemented the half-cent sales tax, so we've completed 2 years, and you can really start seeing the difference. We took, as I've pointed out to council, quite a few of our major arterials, but we're getting in more of the residential streets and continuing on that 5-year program. So the good news is this is year 3. Another $2 million will be spent in upgrading and enhancing our streets. So we've got a big pre-chip maintenance program. I'd like to point out our partnership with the contracting community. That's a big effort that they do to help the pre-chip maintenance, and then you get the final surface course. So year 3 will take place this next budget year, and we'll continue, and we're on a very good pace on what we initially scoped for a 5-year program. We should meet that target. But once again, as we gain the revenue, about $2 million a year puts into it, we put it right back in the investment and paying as we go. But we're right on target to complete in 5 years. So keep in mind, year 3 to be done this next budget year. And just some other enhancements in HERF. I'd like to point out our streets department. We've got pretty good equipment now, and we're actually going to add a roller to help with that pavement enhancement. So we're spending about $50,000 for a roller with the patch wagon that we bought here a couple years ago, and that's really helped, I think, with even the service levels throughout the town. We don't get as many potholes. We do a more intensive job with some of the permanent pavement replacement there. So I think, once again, that's really helped having that half-cent sales tax, and we feel we've been delivering on that enhanced service within that expenditure limit and really have done a good job upgrading the particular service levels. Next, as far as the capital improvement fund, I think I touched about a lot of them. It's part of the general fund, but a robust year with some of the capital improvement. I think one that is important to point out is our development impact fee. We talk a lot about. I think council's aware of the Long Look project basically wiped out that fund. So this is one of those years we build that in expenditure. So we don't have any projects planned, but in the future we will look, once we, with this significant growth, I'll actually apply the development impact fee according to the development impact fee report and continue with some of the circulation enhancements, just like we did at Gloucester Long Look this past year. But got to let that fund build up a little bit more. I did have one last note on the event center. I think it's a community facilities district, but some big capital there. We talked with council. We're going to bring it to you here in May to complete the lot that's south of Florentine. That's about $100,000 in regrading. We've talked in work study, but we'll bring that plus some of the hardscape enhancements, the sidewalk repairs, and we look forward to bringing that to you. I believe it's May 24th meeting. And big capital that's going to go on, but part of the community facilities district and enhancing the particular facility. So we're, I don't know if we'll call it halfway done, got the big parking lot done, but with the summer season, we can complete the parking lots and the hardscape improvements and really call ourselves complete with some of those significant enhancements down there at the event center. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions about Public Works budget.
I just wanted to say that it's wonderful, just so wonderful to see how we're getting back on track with these roads, considering the population that we have coming in, and that the community and the citizens can see their tax dollars at work. And that's so important for them to be able to see that progress and where their money's going. So, it's fabulous. Thank you so much. Your department does a fabulous job.
Thank you. I'll pass that along to him.
All right.
Good. Any other questions, anyone? Mike?
Yes, I'm afraid so. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the Sunset Drive project. You said it was a $7.2 million. Our exposure is about half of that. Right.
And various departments. So keep in mind some of that's a roadway impact fee, but the flood control funding we received back is substantial. That's about $1.2 million of our neighborhood $3 million expenditure. And keep in mind some of the utility departments is involved in that too. So we're anticipating using our development impact fee to help augment some of that. So many different funding sources, but you're correct that about $3 million is basically the town's half.
And then we'll see the majority of that next budget period as far as expenditures.
We will. So we'll get started this current budget year, so it's about a third of the expenditure, about $2.5 million. But late this current FY 18-19, this time next year, we anticipate sending the project out for bid and starting construction.
Yeah. because I think that'll be a great improvement. But there's a lot involved, and I understand why it's so complicated. So.
And Councilman, we can talk, if we bring it back to you, but keep in mind a lot of that is the current utilities with the plant 100% done. All the utility work needs to go on before we start. So as we need to hear back from them on how substantial their improvements are going to be. So we still got some timeline to work out. But what's nice is we've got the particular roadway widening identified. But once we partner with the utilities, obviously that's a big corridor. We might see each utility upgrade significantly, and we'll need to have their timeline because they need to go first from the bottom up. That's how it needs to be done.
Good. Any other questions? Norm?
Mayor, we're looking forward to the next budget year.
I would say go for it full speed.
That we do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to number G, reclaimed water and water resource recharge. Neil, you are up, and John too.
Yeah, pardon me, Mayor. Neil and I came to an agreement. He let me come up first to do my little part, and then he'll do his two
go
pieces.
First, older guy first.
He'll let me go first. So.
No.
Mayor, Council, Vice Mayor, obviously you've heard throughout the evening the town is growing, and that comes with the questions, boy, are we running out of water and that sort of thing. And this is our fund to work on our water supplies. I just want to make sure that anybody listening, we have state statutes and state laws that make sure that we cannot grow beyond our water supplies, number one. Number two, we are working on developing additional water supplies within this budget. Primarily what we're talking about this year in terms of capital, the Big Chino project, that's to fund our agreement, our intergovernmental agreement with the city of Prescott to bring water from the Big Chino water ranch into this area. And along with that is comprehensive agreement number one, which includes Prescott and the Salt River Project as our partners to make sure that we bring that water in an environmentally responsible fashion so that we don't harm the Verde River and those sorts of things. Also important in our water budget, our water portfolio, is the reclaimed water. You heard Larry talk about the reclaimed water being an important function of future growth. So we'll be working on getting more of that water that Neil develops from the wastewater treatment plant as reclaimed water into the ground. Right now we have about 700 or 800 acre feet a year that's stranded. In other words, we produce it, we put it in the aquifer, but we don't get credit for it because we don't have the correct sort of facilities to do that. So we'll be working on injection wells and some small improvements to our North Plains Recharge Basins facility. And then finally, we also act as the fiscal agent for the Upper Verde River Watershed Protection Coalition. That's the other local governments in this area along with us that work on safe yield issues in the Prescott AMA and other water resource issues that we have in common. So as we act as the fiscal agent, we gather grant money, but we make sure that our expenditures don't exceed our grant money, plus our annual user fees. So, with that, Mayor.
Questions, anyone? No? Okay. Thanks, John. Neil, you are up.
Yeah, well, I think that was actually the big thunder. I don't think I have much to add. We've got the operating portion of the budget, and that stays pretty steady from year to year. We do typically have to increase our operational expenditures as they relate to electricity, which we're doing a little bit of an increase there. And the other one is the agreement that we have with CH2M Hill, who was OMI, who is now Jacobs, and that's pretty much staying flat. So there's really not a whole lot to outline. So I think I might just go ahead and take any questions you might have on that.
Questions, anyone? Not yet.
All right. Well, getting on to the water system. As Larry and Norm both alluded to, we have a lot of large capital projects this year. Our participation in the Sunset Lane project, there's going to have to be some sewer work that happens prior to the storm drain going in and the road widening and so forth. So there's a fair amount of work happening on that for both water and wastewater, but in my budget right now, I have $200,000 just for doing some of the water improvements in there. The bigger projects, we've got a couple of very large water tanks that we're going to be building. One is a 3 million gallon tank and the other is a 2 million gallon tank, which will supplement our water supplies on Glassford Hill for not only the new development of Jasper, but also for existing areas of Granville and Castle Canyon Mesa, and potentially properties north of 89A. So that 3 million gallon tank coupled with the existing 1 million gallon tank, we will have 4 million gallons of water for that. Additionally, we have, long ago actually, we had plans for the Stone Ridge water tank, which will be our first water tank south of 69 that is connected to this area up here. We've got some water tanks down in the country club that are not directly connected here, but that's the Stone Ridge tank will be constructed at the same elevation as the tank that sits behind Home Depot, and that provides water for the downtown area for the hospital. And so it is be a nice backup supply, an additional 2 million gallons coupled with the 2 million gallons we have behind Home Depot right now. And so those projects by themselves are going to be, upwards of $5 or $6 million to get those tanks done. As a precursor to the Stone Ridge tank, we're actually going out to bid right now for the installation of the water line that will extend from the end of Stone Ridge, the current development on Destiny Drive there, and we'll take you across the vacant property and up the side of the hill. That 16-inch water line is anticipated to be somewhere around $600,000 or $700,000. But we're doing that. We're bidding it out now. We don't have a specific line item in this year's budget or next year's budget that talks about that, but we do have the funds to cover that. In next year's budget, it's actually included as part of the Stone Ridge water tank project. In this year's budget, we're going to be using money from the what was called the Summit tank, the one up here. We're starting the design on the Summit tank, but we're also going to use some of that funding to pay for the water line that the portion of the water line that we're going to be constructing this year. We have a budget of, I believe it's $2.5 million in this year that will basically cover that. So whatever we don't get spent out of that this year will roll over in the next fiscal year, and we've got $3 million to cover both the tank and the water line for Stone Ridge. So those are the very large projects that we're doing, and we have a number of smaller projects and other types of things that we're doing. We're going to be going out and looking for some additional well capacity, both for the upper water system here and also for the fairgrounds area. So we have about $800,000 budgeted for each of those two also. So those are the large changes or large capital projects that we're going to be putting into place. In terms of our operating budget, we did strive to keep that relatively flat. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of changes in the budget from what we had in there last year. But I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on anything in there as well.
Questions, anyone? Mike?
Yeah, just interested, of course, in Stone Ridge. What would be, when do you project that tank online?
Well, ideally it would be online by the end of next fiscal year. and that's going to be depend on a couple of things. One is getting the water line done first, because we need to have a source of water up there so we can fill the tank and disinfect it and all those other things. So hopefully that project will go fairly smoothly, and we'll get that done here in the early parts of the summer. The actual design of the tank for that location has not yet started. We're in negotiations with an engineering firm to design that tank as well as the Summit tank. Right. I'm anticipating bringing a design agreement to you here prior to the end of this fiscal year, and hopefully in the next month or so. I guess that's about the end of the fiscal year. So, and so that design would start. I anticipate that design would probably be done closer to the end of summer, and then we would get that project bid out as well. And so ideally by the end of the fiscal year. We may wait until we don't have a lot of anticipated rainfall or whatever, but that's what we're looking at.
And you said that there would, I guess the pipeline would connect around the Destiny Lane area. There's this.
Yeah, there's a 16-inch pipe that runs all the way through Stone Ridge and currently terminates at the end of Destiny Drive.
All right. And then Summit is online about the same time or earlier or later?
What we're looking to do there, the idea right now is that we would bid both of those out at the same time, and we would bid them both out as being a reinforced concrete tank.
Right.
And so in doing that, we're hoping to get some economies of scale on the bid. Doing two tanks in one area could reduce our prices pretty dramatically, but we wouldn't have them do both tanks at the same time because they're probably going to be wanting to use the same crews and that sort of thing. So probably one would fall right after the other. And so, yeah, it would hopefully be done about the same time, but one right after the other, and whenever that finished up.
There's no priority as far as which area?
Well, we do the Stone Ridge one first. Just so that we could get that, the water sitting in that line is going to be sitting there with that valve off until we can get that tank built. So we would build that one first. That way we could get that line activated as well, and that's the current thought.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, then we move on then to let's see, number 7. I think you've already covered that, wastewater.
Wastewater?
Yeah.
No, we'll do that one right now.
Okay, do that right now.
And I'll be very brief. We have a number of projects. Most of them are, not super significant in terms of they're not like the water tanks that we're doing on the water side. We are going to do a rehabilitation of the clarifiers at the wastewater treatment plant. And that project, what we're anticipating on doing is actually building it into the Jacobs or the OMI contract this year. As you guys are aware, when we're doing specialized projects, oftentimes we come before you and we do an out-of-scope services agreement with them that's in addition to the contract that you approved at the beginning of the year. We've identified a number of projects this year that we're just going to put those in there in the contract with an identified scope of work and compensation for that, so that we're not doing the contract and then coming back to you a month later and going, now we want to do an out-of-scope services agreement. We'll just do it and roll it all into one. And so the clarifier rehabilitation is one of those projects. I think the other one is the lift station aeration system. One of the other things in here, again, we have $200,000 in here for the work that we're going to be contributing towards for the Sunset Lane project in getting some sewer lines lowered and out of the way of the storm drains. And again, that's pretty much it. On the operations side, again, we're staying fairly flat on the budget on that. I don't think there's anything really outstanding or remarkable about the operations budget.
Anything else? Anyone? Any other questions, comments? I think you've done a good job.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, we move on then to number I, Management Services, bill copy.
I do want to clarify
37.
that I do not drink Kool-Aid. I just want to wish Richard was stuck around.
I love Kool-Aid.
But it's kind of an ongoing, almost I won't say daily, but it's quite frequent discussion that me and Richard have as it relates to permitting and number of permits being issued. So we vary. I'm a little bit more conservative. I think most of you have already realized that. So I'm on the conservative side and Richard's on one other side, and hopefully we end somewhere in the middle. It's usually closer to my side, but I'm not trying to brag or anything. But so anyway, Management Services, Chapter 6, page 43. I just kind of have just a couple of highlights. Personnel, no change in personnel this year. We are going to be upgrading a couple of the IT staff members. Kind of job reclassification, trying to expand their duties a little bit, so we're reclassifying their position. Operating budget, Larry set the goal of a balanced budget or no increase in operating budget. His budget decreased by $5. My budget decreased by $10,683. So I just wanted to show that.
In other words, his was fatter the previous year.
No, he just took money out of my budget. So really the other thing is on the next page we have capital. We have just a couple minor capital items. One of the things that we are looking at doing is actually adding surveillance cameras out in the parking lots. It's probably going to be a couple-year project, but next year we have $60,000 budgeted to start putting cameras in certain areas in a parking lot just for security purposes. So other than that, I do want to also make comment, as Norm said about his staff. I have 3 excellent managers, Mark Lasan, Casey Danner, and Katie Powell. They all do a great job in their departments, and they do a great job overseeing their budgets. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions, anyone? Mary?
Nope, thumbs up.
Thumbs up,
I
Mary
mean-
says.
It's a
Okay,
good
if
one.
there's anything else, Bill?
Nope, I'm good.
With that, we'll move on to I, Town Clerk. I'm sorry, J, Town Clerk Risk Management, page 627.
Nice. Shake it down. Shake.
Hello again.
Hi.
Well, as you can see, my budget's pretty much the same as it is every 2 years. We have another election this year, as you're well aware of. And a lot of what we're doing in the election area this year is in-house because we don't have a special election in.
Speak into the microphone.
To what? Can you hear me now?
Speak into the.
Not hearing you now.
That's better.
Okay. I won't move. So anyway, we're doing a lot of the stuff in-house, plus with the contract that we have with the county to handle our election. What I have done this year is based on the 2016 election. I have guesstimated, if you will, what our portion of the charge of the election will be for the approximately 9 communities or districts that will be involved in this election. So while they're charging like $4.60 per voter, because we participate in every election, we assist them in every election that they help, they reduce that by 25 cents per voter for us, which drops it to $4.35. Well, I estimated from our last election that it cost us just under $3 or so, maybe closer to $2 for each one of our voters. So I budgeted $3 per voter for election, which dropped our total down immensely from that $368,000. So I'm hoping that we've got it covered on that, and I'm thinking we do. So we shall see. That's the biggie for the year. The rest of my budget is pretty much the same as it's always been. My figures don't change too much as far as the operations in the office. The only differences that I have this year is I've got, at this point now, basically 2 staff members that are brand new, and I have another new one starting next Monday. And what I'm going to have to do is, because of our succession planning, I have to get them trained. So I have one of them involved in risk management and will be attending and being a member of Risk Management Association, as I am, both statewide and internationally. I have the other one involved in the Arizona Minutes Clerks Association, getting them up to speed on election training and basic town clerk training. And the other one is involved in records management and will need training in that area. And so basically the only increase in my budget is the election and training for my staff. So the rest of it's pretty much the same. So does anybody have any questions in particular you would like to ask me about the budget?
Jody?
Is it already common knowledge who will be starting on Monday? I wasn't listening really well who that is, sorry.
The person that is coming on is going to be my new deputy clerk, and her name is Fatima Hernandez.
Fatima,
Fatima. And the advantage of hiring Fatima in that position is she also speaks Spanish, and many of our clients speak Spanish. And so that is going to be a tremendous benefit to us as well, besides which she has a brain and she uses it. Oh my gosh, I can't say enough about her. I can't wait till Monday.
Good. Mike?
Nope, answered my question.
Do you have anything else, Jody?
That's it, Mary.
Any other questions, anyone?
Well, I will only add one thing. I stayed below the budget level, too.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that. But if there's no other things, no other information, we shall call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Wow, 4 minutes.